Scottish Football Social Club is brought to you by McBookie.com. Take a lookie at McBookie today.
Good evening, everyone. It is a bank holiday, but given this is the only social club that Michael Stewart has ever been invited into, we just had to go on tonight. When the show goes on, Alan Hutton here, as always, too. Michael, that's got you started. Any rants coming this week, Michael, first of all?
You're the one that comes out with the rants, Darryl, not me.
I'm still getting the wrist slapped after that one. I've got to watch what I say now. Alan, the end of the season is very much in sight. That has to be a relief to you, given the Mondays.
Yeah, because from week to week, you just really don't know what you're going to get. I don't know if I'm going to be excited to come on or down in the dumps or whatever. But yeah, weekend wasn't too bad, but it'll be good to finish the season and start again.
It actually says it all, Al, from your point of view. If it's damage limitation now, from your point, that just sums up the whole season, doesn't it?
Darryl, can you believe that he was that upset and disappointed that he left the PFA Scotland Awards before the Player of the Year award was handed out? Because he just knew. He knew what was coming.
But you see,
don't start. Don't give it that was the reason. He's just exposing me for no reason. That is just not what happened.
Is there a reason, Al, or is it just discipline that, you hit a time, you've had a couple of drinks and enough's enough?
I just had to go out to the toilet for a little bit, and then when I came back, it was done. It wasn't my fault. I didn't mean to. It was just one of those things.
I know where the awards are held, and the problem is the bar is next to the toilets. Sometimes you just run for a couple of minutes.
You know what it's like, Darryl? You get chatting to some people, and before you know it, like you're going round the houses and all that sort of stuff. So it's difficult. Like it's one of those things.
It is. It very much is. By the way, I've just noticed, is that a reflection in the TV there? I think that's the laundry you can see in the background. I thought I had that well out of the way, but it's very much in the reflection. Anyway, listen, after the Old Firm yesterday, we had to balance the books with Alan on, so we needed a Celtic guest. Clearly, I'm delighted to tell you that big Johan Mjällby, who's not let us down all season long with that amazing tan of his, is back with us again, waiting to come on the show. So let's get Johan in. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Yeah, great to see you all, gentlemen. It sounds like you all had a cracking night.
It was good. It was good.
Those two did anyway. Johan, every time I see you, I swear you're looking younger and younger. Have you ever been fitter these last 10 years?
That was a strange question coming on. No, I'm actually fairly fit right now. I've been playing a wee bit of tennis now, so I'm starting to lose some timber, So the muscle is going because I'm getting so old, but I can still run about a wee bit now.
You're looking. He'll be in that paddle tennis world championships before we know it, guys. Anyway, that's a conversation for another social club. Johan, let's get right into it. I won't keep you too long tonight. I know you were watching the game closely at Ibrox yesterday. What did you make of it overall?
I have to say, I think both managers are going to be fairly happy from the out of the perspective how they are set up and the philosophy they play with. I think Celtic coming in, with Brendan Rodgers having a wee bit of problem, playing Rangers. I think they showed that at times I felt they were on their way to creep back into the game and win it as well. Especially after conceding so late in the first half. You never know how it's going to be in half time. But I thought second half was good, and I think they play the way they always do, don't they? And they created a few chances, but maybe not as many chances as Brennan had liked. I have to say, and once again, they looked a wee bit frail when it comes to set pieces, against Rangers. But overall, I think it was a decent, good performance from Celtic. Already had won the league. I think they, quite happy to just avoid defeat at Ibrox.
Johan, though, given the last couple of results against Rangers, though, and I don't know if you heard, we had Peter Grant on the show recently as well, and Peter was saying how angry he would have been after the last result. Coming to Celtic Park, Rangers coming away with the 3 points that day, and he didn't want that to kind of continue that theme. Given what had happened before, were you a bit surprised that Celtic got off to a bit of a slow start in the game? I mean, Rangers had the better chances, obviously, in the early stages of the match.
Yeah, but I think they really had analyzed the last two games against Rangers too, because I think they were way better not falling into the traps that Rangers have been setting. You know, when it comes to their pressing, you know, in the last two games I've seen they play each other. You know, I think Rangers have won the ball quite high up, and you know, and from then had good opportunities in quite short distance to the Celtic goal. But I think they were a wee bit, if you can call it, direct. I mean, obviously they don't play the long, high balls, but I thought they felt that Celtic played a wee bit, quicker off the ground. Not trying to just keep possession for the sake of it. It didn't really, create any more opportunities, any chances, goal scoring chances. But I still felt that they had analyzed, the last two games, and they were better set up for this game.
Alan, it's still a conundrum, isn't it, Rangers? Because you look at the league table and they're miles behind Celtic, and yet you look at the last three games. Again, Celtic, 7 points out of 9, gave them a really good contest in the Cup as well this season. It's a head-scratcher.
Yes, I mean, the table doesn't lie. It's there for all to see. You have to be consistent over the season, and Celtic have been. I just still feel it's a mentality thing, or that added in with the quality of the group has to be better, because they can lift it at certain times. I think playing against Celtic, it suits Rangers, because defensively they can be solid and they're concentrated, and then they can break quickly on the counter-attack. That's why I think it works against Celtic. But when they have to go and break teams down, when they go to St Mirren or Dundee United or Dundee or wherever it may be, that's when they really struggle. I mean, I thought they did start the game really well. They were aggressive. They were on the front foot. They put Celtic under pressure. They kept Maeda quiet as well, and especially they changed it a little bit in midfield, more of a kind of diamond at times, so that the space was down the wings for Celtic, and it wasn't really until the second half that they started putting the ball in behind Tav for Maeda to obviously stretch his legs. But overall, I thought it was a fair result. I thought both teams created opportunities. Celtic possibly could have nicked it, the last kick of the ball, but the thing is, being consistent. That's what needs to change next season. I think there's going to be a fair amount of turnaround, but the quality has to go up, and they have to be consistent. Week in, week out, they need to be winning games of football, not just turning it on against Celtic or a European nights. It has to be every single week.
But
go on, Michael.
On that front, and Alan's already spoken about it there, it's a completely different style of football to be as Rangers are in Europe against Celtic, where they're not the ones that are having to dominate and also dictate how the game's going. They're able to soak up pressure and hit on the counter-attack. But as Alan's pointed out, for the vast majority of the other games domestically, the onus is on Rangers to go and actually implement their game in terms of dominating possession, breaking teams down. And that, to me, is mentality slightly, but it's quality as well. It's quality. It is the easier side of the game, to a certain extent, is to be destructive and to stop. You need to have that extra quality to be able to create and open up. And Rangers don't have that same level of quality that Celtic do have. So there's no question that the mentality is an issue. But the other glaring issue is quite clearly they need greater quality in the team if they're going to compete with Celtic over a full season. And at the moment, that is a big task. Talking to a few folk last night, and some people think it's not as big a gap as others. It's a big gap. They need to really strengthen a lot of that squad. And at the same time, they need to hope that Celtic lose some players, have an absolute nightmare in the transfer window, and there's some of their key players next season don't even compete at the level you would expect. It's a big gap that needs to be bridged, and I don't see it happening just next season. It is something that will need to take time.
Johan, you've seen a lot of Rangers this season. Obviously, you've seen more of Celtic, but you've seen enough of Rangers now. I was asking Alan on this show last week, and probably other weeks as well, like how big the rebuild is for Rangers, because the new owners are likely to be in very soon. They're going to give the next manager, whoever that is, some money to spend. But how many of those players in that current team, Johan, that you've seen enough of from Rangers this season, do you think are keepers that they can build around? Do you see enough of that?
No, I don't. Like both Alan and Michael has pointed out, the table doesn't lie. I think it depends on the kitty, obviously. The new manager, how much he's going to get spent, because recruitment is not everything, but a lot when it comes to to come back, and be able to, I think, challenge Celtic again. Because Celtic is in such a great place. They are well run. They will look for reinforcements. Jota got the injury; he's going to be out for 9 months, something like that. They're going to obviously try to get another, probably 2-3 in, maybe more. But because they're so well run, and they had so many match winners, it's going to take a lot of money, I think, for Rangers to bridge in the gap, in a short time, anyway. But, like I say, everything can happen really, really quickly. It depends on the money that a new manager is going to get. I don't know who's going to become the new manager, but whoever gets it's going to be a very, very difficult time for him, But I do expect that Rangers is going to be much, much better when it comes to, winning home games, creating a team that is going to be able to win against lesser teams, if you put it that way. It's teams they're not going to be able to obviously match them, when it comes to, players.
Obviously,
it'll be interesting to see what money they do get.
Yeah, it will. It will. Just on Celtic, obviously, Maeda. Sorry, Al. Had the opportunity, Johan, right at the end of the game, and we'll come to the highlights hopefully shortly. But just on Maeda, PFA Player of the Year, or something I think we all spoke about a couple of months ago. It was almost set in stone back then. This window will be a test for Celtic as well, because there's been speculation, as there always is in the press this week, about some of the top English sides already looking at Dyson Maeda. I mean, what kind of price tag is someone going to need to pay to prize a player like that away from Celtic, Johan? And also, losing him, to me, it feels bigger than just one player, because the style of football in Europe, everything Brendan Rodgers tries to do, he epitomises it. The way he moves on the pitch, the way he presses. Losing him would be the biggest of all blows, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. You're right. He is the perfect player for the way Brendan Rodgers wants to play, and he has improved this season. He's always had this running power, the energy. He's been a great, player that is going to obviously start the pressing. But I think he's improved his goal scoring abilities. I think it's been much more of a threat when it comes to putting chances away this season, and he's. For me, it has looked that he's taking a bigger responsibility as well. He's been fantastic, no question of that. But I think he does, though, even if it's going to be other clubs coming in, going for him. Look at Kyogo. It didn't go too well for him, going to Rennes, did it?
Did not. It did not. Maybe it's made him think. Sorry, Al, I'll cut you off. On you go, mate.
No, it's fine. I'd be happy to see him leave to go to a big team personally, but that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. No, I was just saying.
You think Aston Villa should sign him? Aston Villa should sign him, eh?
Aye, that's a good shout. Right, that's a good shout.
Well, listen, what is the price tag? As we see the match highlights, what is the price tag? Seriously, Alan, what could Celtic get from him? Johan, you can chime in as well.
For a player of his, I'd say, because he scores goals as well, and he can run forever. He's quick. I'd say, it's, I'm not an expert with this, but I would say definitely, like 45-50 million.
Oh.
That is top dollar. Top dollar. Alan, what do you think?
That's big. That's big. I was thinking more like 15, high touching 20 possibly. But we were
talking about Niklas Kühn, in the start of the season when he had a couple of 3-4 good months, that he was around like 25 mil.
It just depends on the contract. I mean, I'm not sure on the length of his contract, what you get left, and all those sort of things, and where he's
got 2 years left. He signed a new 4-year deal back in 2023. So it's at that situation for Celtic where, they've got a decision to make. They don't want to be obviously leaving it to run into the last year of his contract. But equally, I don't think they can afford to lose Daisen Maeda with what they're trying to do in terms of building the team in Europe. I think he is, he literally is a heartbeat.
Here's the big chance, Michael.
It's huge.
He needs to square it. He has to square it.
Yeah, I do think that. It's a massive missed opportunity for him. But no, I mean, look, for me, when you're talking obviously about looking at the market down south, they'll chuck numbers about for players that have barely come out of the youth team that are comparable with what Hutz is talking about, 15-20 million. But you have to recognise that they're never going to pay the top money for somebody that's playing in Scotland. They just won't do it.
Exactly.
But realistically, I don't see why Celtic, with the strength and the position that they have, why they would be looking to, if they were going to look to sell them, why they would accept anything less than 25 million.
Yeah, I mean that's it, because if they don't take, I mean if they're accepting a number, let's say like Alan threw it there at 15 million, and bearing in mind Alan's got the taxi ready to drive him off in, by the way.
I'll take him.
He's going to get him at a low price for Villa, so it's win-win. He can get a cheap.
He's irreplaceable at that price.
Celtic
that would be
can't
the
replace
point.
him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
Johan,
see,
are you serious, Johan? Because 40, 50, I mean, I don't know. That's unprecedented money for a player in Scotland.
I mean, I'm a Celtic fan, so obviously I don't want to see him go. But, if Villa is going to show interest in him, I mean, Celtic is not daft enough knowing that Villa had a really, really good run in the Champions League. I mean, they got money in the bank. So, listen, it's never ever going to be 15-20 then. Then it's definitely going to be 25 plus.
Yeah. I mean, Villa, they mentioned Alan, but so have Arsenal, so have Chelsea, and they need the competition potentially. Alan could drive up the price.
Yeah, of course it could, but I think for a player of his quality, ticks all the boxes for a lot of teams. I mean, he's running power, he gives 110% every time. He's got way better when it comes to finishing, as we've seen. He can play in multiple positions. If you want him to be that number 9, we've seen that he can go and do that. I mean, the biggest compliment you could give him is Kyogo left, and people were a bit nervous about what was going to happen next. He was the next one up and just ran with it, and he's been absolutely perfect ever since. So he's an outstanding footballer, and I'm just joking when I say I want him to leave and all that. I'm just kidding on. No, I'm not really. But
right.
I mean, but you want these top talents playing in our league and shining. So it'd be interesting to see if a big offer did come in, because Celtic, as we know, with the big players that they have, they're not scared to go and cash in, and then they trust the process to go and get the next person in. So it'd be interesting.
Johan, just before you go on, Michael.
I was going to say, I wanted to ask Johan this question. See, with the last 3 results that Celtic have had against Rangers, and particularly with it being a draw there, so it's not a sore one. Do you think Brendan Rodgers will quietly be a little bit happier with that in regards to strengthening his hand to go to the board and say, look, I've already spoken about we need to, strengthen in certain areas. Jota's out for 9 months now. Rangers are showing that they've got a wee bit between their teeth. Could there be a bit of a silver lining in having not won that game to just re-emphasise the need to go and reinvest?
Very, very great point. I do think Brendan Rodgers is, obviously he wants to win all his games, especially against Rangers. But it's going to be easy for him now, going and discussing with the board, and telling them, look, my team is great. We've had a brilliant season, but we're not unstoppable. We've lost twice to Rangers, a draw as well now. So and Brendan wants to progress even more in Europe. So now, obviously, he's shown that he's capable to have a good run in Europe. I think the supporters and the board, they are obviously over the moon with the money coming in, with the Champions League being this money brilliant thing for the club. So I think he's got a lot to in his in his bag, when he goes up and see the board, to be able to, lure them into, yes, we need a couple of really, really good players here, so, to strengthen the team and to improve and to get even better.
Can I just, Johan, I'll let you go in just a sec, but just final question, just on a couple of players. How would you assess overall the seasons that Adam Ida have had and Arne Engels? Because both, of course, have been in the spotlight a lot, given the money paid for them.
Yeah. I have to say, I think Arne Engels is going to he's going to show us all, for the next few years, what a good player he is. He's a young player. You have to remember that. And even if he's been now nearly a season at the club, it takes time. It doesn't matter how good you are, to come to a different mentality. Playing for Augsburg, you weren't used to win too many games, were they? Now you're at Celtic, you have to win every single game. And you have to perform every time, otherwise you're going to get criticism. He is a very, very good player, and I think he's going to come good. When it comes to Adam Ida, I think, if you look at his goal scoring record, it's decent. If you look at the amount of minutes he's had on the pitch, it's not bad. He is a goal scorer. He's a national goal scorer. Yes, you can sometimes criticize him for not being, have the nimbleness of feet and maybe not being the quickest, but he's a strong lad. He's good to have in the squad, and he's good for Brendan to put on, when he wants to change games as well, because obviously he's good in the air. He's very physical, compared to the other attacking players.
Okay, good man. Excellent. Johan, listen, that's the 20 minutes have come and gone. I promise no more. So I'll let you go tonight. Great to see you. Thanks again for coming on the show. We'll speak soon.
No probs. All the best, boys.
Johan.
All the best.
Right. Thank you. Just before we draw a line under the match, I'll just have a final quick one, if you like, couple of points on Rangers. Big decisions clearly to be made now. Look, they've got to get something sorted with Nico Raskan if they want to keep him, surely. I know he's still got time left in the contract, but vultures will circle during the summer and the new owners are coming in. Decision to be made on Cherney and Balogun as well. It seems like every year, the end of the season, he's another year older, he's out of contract again. But he seems to be their go-to guy. Surely these are the type of people you need to keep at the club if you want to strengthen.
Yeah, I mean, Cherney's the big one for me. I mean, I think he's had an outstanding season, and if they really want to build something and move forward as a team, I think that's the type of player that they need. And Raskin, of course, I think he's been outstanding again from probably the turn of the year. I mean, he was given the captain's armband a couple of times as well, and I thought that really spurred him on even more. International recognition now as well, so that kind of gets you out there in the spotlight even more, and he's had some really good performances. So again, if you want to build something and be serious about it, you need these guys. I mean, again, if some team's going to test the water and put in a decent bid for him, then
what are you talking this time?
110 million. Somewhere about 100-ish. No, but if somebody's going to test the water, it'll be interesting to see what they do, because you'll kind of get to know where their minds are at and what they're planning for the future, because you need these guys. Why would you try and build something and sell them on? I don't think you have to do that at this moment in time. So that's why I always go back to, it'll be interesting to see how much money the new manager or Barry or whoever's there gets to spend, and they need to make good decisions on players that are coming in. You can't get it wrong, because it will set you back years, because it's going to be, there's a lot of work needing done, so they need to get it right.
Am I right in saying that, I can't remember whether we spoke about this, but certainly the number for Václav Černý is set in stone, but it needs to be done before a certain date. Is that correct? Yeah.
And I'm sure I read it's just in just a couple of weeks away now, Michael. So whether the takeover happens or not, somebody needs to make a call.
Yes, somebody that this is, and this was the reason I was bringing up, that irrespective of how long this takeover is going to take before it is confirmed, there needs to be some sort of dialogue with regards to Černý, because, correct me if I'm wrong again, I'm sure it was around about 7.5 million or something like that.
I think it might even have
been about that.
For that sort of money, even if you were to do the deal, you know straight away, if whoever came in was like, we don't fancy him, you would still make money on that almost instantly after the season that he's had, because he's worth more than that valuation. So it would be worth Rangers' time to, irrespective of whether he was to stay or whether somebody else was, to move him on, it's worth their time to get that deal done, because he's
Mikey, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Like, you think of the money they spent on the likes of Danilo. just for an example. Like I'll just pluck that one out just for an example. And what they've done in their career so far at Rangers.
Lammers,
like so much money was spent. Oh, don't start with that. Aye. But like you're looking at it thinking that's why I'm saying you have to get it right, because it will set you back seasons if you make these same mistakes again. But it needs to be the right type of player, the right character. Aye. Honestly. Oh,
right, I've got to move on, but I have to mention as well, Rangers have very much condemned the banner, the large tifo display, Alan, and obviously objects getting thrown in the pitch. But I think we're all bored of it. We've had to talk about it so many times in Scottish football down the years. But are you happy with the club's response?
Yeah, as soon as I seen it, I went, oh no, what am I seeing here? Like, you just kind of, not again. It's something they can't shake. Like, see all this, the throwing of the objects and everything. I think it's too far. Like, you can't be doing stuff like that. It's just, it needs to stop. And everybody around the world has seen this. It's not a good look.
Yeah, that's, for me, by the way, that was quite an important point there, because you've got the new owners coming in and foreign markets they're trying to open up to for sponsorship. So if there was ever a time to keep your head as a fan, Michael, it would be now. Just briefly, Michael, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, I mean, look, just echoing what Alan said there, and I've come to the viewpoint now in terms of things that are said or the words, all those they're far from ideal. But the biggest concern for me is the launching of Buckfast bottles and stuff like that, because there is genuine threat to people's. Let's not beat about the bush. You could kill somebody. You could kill somebody throwing a bottle like that, and that, as much as the tifos are a bit distasteful and they're absolutely out of order and there's no need for it, it's the launching of bottles that is of the most paramount need to stamp out.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Right, we must move on. There'll be fans of other clubs watching saying we've just done 27 minutes. Obviously, we had Johan Mialbi on, hence why we did a lot in the Old Firm. But we will move on to some huge games played at the weekend. Michael, Hibs bounce back, really good victory, impressive win against Dundee United. We were questioning last week, momentum lost a little bit. How would they respond? That's the way to do it. Yeah,
they responded brilliantly, I've got to say. Over the piece, thoroughly deserved to win the game. Dundee United were better in the second half. They made a couple of changes and reacted well, but Hibs just they took advantage of some poor defensive errors, but they were clinical, they were ruthless, and they're playing with a real verve and energy, and they're getting to the stage now where, particularly if you look at the last couple of home games against Dundee and then Dundee United as well, where they're banging in a fair amount of goals and they're actually really good to watch. This team has now evolved from the depths of despair back in November, when they were managing to find a way to win some games. They're now doing it with some real entertainment. They're good to watch, and credit to them. But Dundee United were better in the second half. They gave Hibs a wee bit of a scare when they managed to get this one goal back in the game.
That was the opportunity. That was the opportunity there. I think it was Seville at 2-1. But this is what Hibs can do, Alan, isn't it? Because they've got players that they can bring on who can make an impact in games. And obviously straying off the line there. But Kieran Bowie, who had lost his place in the team or rotated, whatever you want to say. Nicky Cadden, we spoke about last week, coming on, making a big impact for them.
Yeah, perfect. And that's what you want. That's why you have a strong squad. And every team goes through moments where you've got injuries and stuff, but to have all these players fit and available, all fighting the same cause in the same direction. You hear David Gray speaking about it, how they're all as one at that moment in time, and you can see it, the way they play. They're playing for each other. They're giving absolutely everything. And I heard them say, 8 games at home in a row they've won in all competitions. It's incredible. I keep going back to from that time we seen them at Dundee to now. It's like literally night and day. They've been outstanding. And you would think that they would get third. Now, there's a little gap there. Look, big games coming up. I know it's going to be a test for them against Celtic, but the way they're playing at the moment, you never know. They could get something out of it.
You know, when you
Gale
say
off the
8
benches,
games,
Gale off the bench as well. By the way, of course, he scored. But you're right. You don't know what kind of Celtic you're going to come up against. I see Brendan Rodgers is saying, Michael, they're going to rotate some players now, rest some for the cup final.
Yeah.
I mean, Hibs are in the box seat now for third.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, they have been for a while, but obviously the result last week just sort of threw it into question a little bit. But I think that for Hibs, Hutch, they're talking about 8 games in a row having won. It takes you back to when Neil Lennon was in charge at Hibs and they'd come back up to the top flight. In the second half of the season, they won 8 home games and drew 1. And the last one that they drew was the game against Rangers, where they had an outside chance of getting, I think it was second in the league or third in the league, perhaps. And they had to overhaul Rangers' goal difference. And I don't know if you remember the game. They scored 2 inside the first 10 minutes, and it was like, oh my word, they're going to actually do this. It ended up 4-4 or 4, maybe even 5-5. I can't remember.
I think it was 5-all, wasn't it?
It was an unbelievable game. But that was I wasn't wanting to compare Hibs now to then, because that team was a bit special. There was some top talent in there. But the entertainment level of what we just saw in the last couple of games was reminding me a little bit of that time when Neil Lennon had a side that were blistering, and going to Easter Road to do games was, it was a real joy. You were like, these guys are really good to watch, and it's starting to move in that direction.
Yeah, they had so many good attacking players back then, exactly the same now. And as I said, they bounced back from defeat the previous week. Aberdeen, of course, had won a couple of games in a row in this race for Europe, race for third, if you like. A big win in the Scottish Cup semi-final, then obviously 3 points last week. So they go to St Mirren this weekend. Alan, everyone's keeping an eye on them to see what they do. And they lose. It's that type of season. I'm very much up and down at times in recent week for the Dons, but all credit has to go to St Mirren and Stephen Robinson. And what an end to the season they're having.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. I mean, especially after the result against Rangers going into that, they would have been full of confidence. And you know Stephen Robinson, how he sets his teams up. They're hard to beat. They're very defensively minded at times. They're strong, but they've got a threat. They've always got a threat going forward, I feel. And see, Aberdeen, what I've noticed anyway, recent weeks, they've really struggled to break teams down. I mean, it is a handball. It is a hand. Look, I do feel for him, because he gets a little nudge. He gets a nudge, and it kind of puts him off balance and his arms out. But it did then lead to a goal.
Do you think that's deliberate?
No, it's not deliberate, but it hit his hand and it led to a goal. So it is what it is, isn't it? Right, Michael, if you've got something to say, you don't need to wait.
That goal could stand.
But it's
not deliberate.
No, but his arms out. See if it was by his side, then
why
it's
was
not
it
making
out?
himself better.
But why was
I know,
it
because
out?
you get nudged.
Yeah.
Michael, I get what you're saying, because you get nudged. But my point being is, it's way out, it's bigger, it's away from his body, and it leads to a goal.
Yeah.
So if that arm wasn't there,
but the reason it's out is because of the challenge from Gogic. Now, the challenge isn't a penalty kick, but his arm's out. Like we all know, if you're jumping or moving and you're challenged like that, inevitably your arms are going to come out. And by the way, it's the barest of touches. I just think that
I know.
I appreciate from a St Mirren standpoint, if you looked at that after the fact, after the game, because I'm not sure there would have been too many that would have seen it in real time. After the game, you'd have been looking at it going, oh, maybe that's touched his hand, that should have been disallowed. But the vast majority of football people, I think, would want to see that goal standing, because Kevin Nisbet is challenged for Gogic. That's the reason his arm's so far out from his body, and it's the barest of touches. And either way, what I would say is Killian Phillips is a lucky, lucky boy at the back post, because he was sleeping and he got away with that.
You can see it both ways, Al, can't you? Because it's a hard one in a way to allow the goal to stand, because the arms come up towards the ball, and as you say, it's high up. Even if he means it right, doesn't mean it. Only obviously Kevin Nisbet's going to know.
It doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it.
Then do you have to take all that into consideration and award a goal?
No, listen, I understand Michael's point of view. I totally get it. It's the nudge that makes his arm go out. But I just feel, I'm thinking just from, like, say, more of a ref's point of view and him looking at it or going to look at it, whatever. The arm's out, it touches arm. Yep, it's not. it's a skiff off his finger or whatever, but it led to a goal. That's the only thing here for me. I do get what you're saying. There's not a lot in it, but it did lead to a goal.
Yeah.
And more
What do
often
you
than
make of
not,
the Dons
that's
at the
going to
moment?
happen.
Michael, what do you make of the Dons at the moment? You've seen an awful lot of them. They have to hang in there. Obviously, they're still in the mix.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's two things that I would say about it. If you look at the season as a whole, then you've got to say that it's been successful so far. And regardless of what happens, whether they finish third or fourth and whether they win the cup or not, I think if you look at where Jimmy Tillin has taken them to where they are now, with either of those scenarios playing out, I think Aberdeen as a club would have said, right, great, that's progress, we can build from there. The second thing is obviously there has been a lot of mitigation in there, and there's been a lot of peaks and troughs, and there's been a lot of things happening where it's not been a smooth ascent to this position. So at the moment, there's some question marks about, what are they going to be, for example, next season? Because this is the point I was making before. It's not been a steady progress. It's not like, for example, Hibs, where you're looking at horrific start, but there's been this team that has started to evolve, and you can see real nice bits within it and parts of the squad that potentially have more growth. You're looking at Aberdeen, there's still quite a few question marks about it.
Yeah. We had Cat Lady's point about Nicky Cadden a minute ago. By the way, maybe that's Nicky Cadden in disguise, because Cat Lady just wants Nicky back in the team. But Graham Gibb here, he's got a good point in Aberdeen, because watching the extended highlights, Alan, they probably didn't create enough offensively, and that has been a bit of
No
an
shots
issue
on
at times.
target. No shots on target, I don't think. I mean, I know that obviously the goal that was disallowed, but from when I seen them at the start of the season, what I liked about them, and there was a clear game plan. They tried to move the ball really quickly from side to side. They got it out wide. They had pace in wide areas. There was overlaps, underlaps. They cut the ball back, and they were scoring goals. The last few times that I've watched them, it's as if they've kind of ran out of ideas. See when a team goes back, like Rangers struggles. See when a team goes back and sitting there defensively really sound and solid, they end up just in a line. There's like 5 of them in a line, and all just staring at the ball. Like they've went away from what made them good, I feel. And it looks to me at this moment in time, they've just ran out of ideas a wee bit. They're all looking for a spark, and it's not really happening.
And they've got enough good offensive players. That's it. When I look at the team, I always think, well, there's some real talents there. So why is it not?
But it's when you take the space away from them, Darryl. Like, so, see, like Shaden Morris, for an example, runner, wants to get in behind. You've seen it in the semi-final, the first half. He was getting in behind, he was causing problems, whatever. But see when a team drops back, so when Hearts drop back, deny them the space, then they kind of run out of ideas. That's when you have to move the ball quick. You need runners going in behind the space that they've left at times. You need people coming short. And it was just everybody had the same idea, and they ended up in a line. At one stage, there was just 6 in a line. Even Jensen, the right back, was up there in the line. And they just kind of ran out of ideas. So, like Michael saying, it'll be interesting to see how this team develops and what they're going to be next season.
Yeah. But of course, St Mirren can be tough to play against, Michael, when they're at the top of their game. We saw that again at the weekend. And what a job Stephen Robinson's done. I know we've said it a couple of times. I mean, they've still got the outside chance of European football. Yep. I mean, given everything, the adversity, the players he's lost throughout this campaign, the early season, I go to Europe and everything else. I mean, even to get close, I know the PFA Manager of the Year award is already given out and people voting that quite early. I think the league, the SPFL Manager of the Year candidates are still to be revealed, I think. Anyway, I'm not sure. I've seen that shortlist. And I don't know how late in the season that goes. But if he gets them within a point or two, or maybe even in Europe, that is one heck of an effort from him this season with that squad.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, equally on that front, talking about managerial choices for the Manager of the Year, if Jimmy Tillin wins the Scottish Cup and finishes third, then, he's a standout candidate.
And
so
Jim
it is
Goodwin,
all about time.
Jim Goodwin not been on the shortlist.
It's about time. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure why there is only 3.
In the PFA, that was,
shortlist. But, I mean, look, I think, Stephen Robinson, it falls into the same sort of category of, the discussion about why is he not suggested and spoken about higher up the pecking order for other jobs that come around. For St Mirren's perspective, they absolutely will be delighted with that, because he has literally grabbed that club by the scruff of the neck and dragged them into the top 6 3 years in a row and built strong foundations there. It's a credit to him. Football at
lost
times,
key players. Yeah.
I'm just going to say the football at times, that's maybe, if I'm being brutally honest, maybe part of the reason why there is a reluctance to maybe speak about it in a higher regard.
Is that not just utilising your resources as best you can?
This is exactly what I was just about to say to you then. It would be a case of what he's working with in terms of budget-wise. He creates the most effective and efficient team that's able to compete higher up in terms of financially than where the reality is for the club. So,
and he can do that without a supercomputer. That's good going. That.
Well, I like what you've done there, Alan, because you can take us forwards into the bottom 6 and the supercomputer now. Because I've seen all sorts of names still being linked with Hearts. I think we'll come to that. First of all, should we just deal with the victory up in Dingwall against Ross County, because that was crucial. And Liam Fox, obviously, again, has the job on a temporary basis, made some alterations that seem to have been a quick fix, Michael, and they've helped players like Lawrence Shanklin, clearly, who was excellent in the game. Full credit to Liam Fox and to Hearts at the weekend.
Yep, it was a very good performance. They had it, come through a bit of adversity going 1-0 down as well. But overall, they were the better side from start to finish. It's a great strike from Ronan Hill, got to be said. But Hearts played well. And Lawrence Shanklin, lo and behold, stick him in between the sticks, get him close to the goals, and guess what? The guy could score goals.
Not rocket science, is it?
Not rocket science at all. A
bit of pace out wide, bit of pace outside. Shanklin through the middle. You've been saying it for months.
I appreciate that football isn't just as straightforward and as simple as that. But equally, it's not as difficult as some like to make out. And the simplification has helped Hearts massively. The big issue here is that you can't. That's a great strike from Blair Spittle as well, by the way. That's the cross.
Not seen enough of that recently from him after a brilliant start to the season.
Yeah, I know, but people are, I think, quick to really have a go at players, and they've not been good enough. They've been a disgrace. They need to perform better. You need to actually understand a little bit as well the absolute madness that has been evolving around them.
Yeah.
That's what he's
fully agreed, and he's not always had his place in the team. That's exactly the point I'm making. Not all the players' fault for sure, but the Hearts fans know the talent he's got.
Yeah, Blair Spittle's been a very, very good signing for Hearts. But I was just going to say that the problem that Hearts have ultimately got is, as we've spoken about endlessly, is getting that balance in the team. Liam Fox made the decision that he was willing to take a bit of a gamble with the likes of Vargas, who isn't up to the standard. But what he does do is he gives a bit of balance. And that balance then brings the better elements of the likes of Lawrence Shanklin's game. So he's taken a gamble there. He's brought Alan Forrest on as well. 2 guys out wide, as Alan's talking about. Not blistering pace, but better balance to the team. And that balance has ultimately helped the end product, which was a good performance and 2 goals for Lawrence Shanklin. Which standard.
But by the way, a great response from Lawrence as well, having not answered the questions going into the club's player of the year night. I've seen that response from Michael at the bar a few times, but 3 a.m, Alan, back in the day. Michael's at your round.
Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. But look, it's not rocket science, is it? I mean, Hearts did play well, and Michael has been saying it for a number of weeks now. He needs to play higher up, and he's a goal scorer. If you give him the ball in the right area, he will score goals. I mean, simple as that.
We can't talk about everything, obviously, from Ross County's point of view. Michael, I was just going to Ross County's point of view. Obviously, not a great time to be finding this kind of poor form at this point in the season. But let's just focus on Hearts, because there's a few things I want to ask you about. At 1-0 down, sack the board chance, which I'm sure were noted by you. There's a lot of pressure on that board at the moment to make the right decisions for this football club now.
huge. I mean, and there's obviously a lot of mixed messages coming out, people trying to cover their own backs and all sorts in terms of what has gone on. Fundamentally, they need to make sure that they make good, solid, sensible football decisions. It's the same problems that have existed for a number of years. And what baffles me is that when people, you would think, human instinct, when you're in a position like that, you don't take punts. You do things that are what you would regard as the safe, sensible option. But for some bizarre reason, the Hearts board continually avoid doing that and take punts. But I tell you, if they were to do that again, then they would not be able to survive.
Well, Michael, with that in mind then, right, because I've seen some of the local journalists, guys like Barry Anderson, who are on the beat there, obviously in Edinburgh, and know the football club well, excellent journalists, and others on social media tonight and some of the newspaper articles saying that the current board, this is the word anyway, they want a manager with a track record who knows the Scottish game very well. If that's true then, and you mentioned Derek McInnes last week, remember, if that's true, I wonder if that's a slight move away from the analytics. Or indeed, if that's the criteria for the analytics to help the club decide, help the board decide who to go for. If all of that's true, what I've just said, does it mean like somebody like Derek McInnes is extraordinarily likely to be offered this job, Michael?
Well, I mean, there's two things I would say on that front. That you'll always want to utilise technology. Of course you do. It'd be madness not to. But when you're talking about looking at domestic, managerial appointments, I'm not 100% sure what your two eyes can't tell you that data would be able to tell you. We know, we see it. You understand what I mean? It's not as if there's hidden gems in there that you would take a punt on at this moment in time. I go back to, you're looking to make a strong footballing decision, sensible. So, and on that,
but you said Jimmy Talim was a really good decision by Aberdeen in the end after the start of the season. Sometimes don't you need analytics to be able to go into other leagues and factor some of the data for? Can that not help as well? Or are you saying on this occasion Hearts can't take that sort of risk?
Well, I think you've summed it up there, Darren. Yeah, basically, yeah. And they need, the other thing is they need to get a manager in, not a head coach, a manager. Because I've spoken about this before, that what's happened is you have a situation where in modern football, lots of clubs, and not just clubs, but businesses as well, you've got so many layers of middle management that you've hollowed out the strong characters that make decisions. And in football in particular, that used to be a manager. And you had the chairman who would run the business. Now, all these different layers, and by the way, in those layers, there are so many absolute bluffers who are just trying to reinvent the wheel to justify their position. And Hearts have now found themselves in a hybrid where they don't have strong characters on the board with football acumen, and they have gone for coaches who weren't strong coaches either. The end result is you've got a rudderless ship. So now, they're not going to change all the board right now. So what they need to do is they need to go and get a strong manager who's going to run the football side, which in tail will then help the club, which, as I've said on a number of occasions, the board, give them their due and their due credit, they have done great things on the business side. But when it comes to football, the most important part, they need to get this call right and get a proper manager.
But you've obviously made the point you think Derek McInnes would be the right man. Alan, sorry, just for you, because before we move on, Alan, do you think Derek McInnes is a good fit for Hearts? If they can get him?
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't like to see him leave Kilmarnock. I think he's done a good job there, and I think there'd be a lot of unhappy people down in Ayrshire. But Michael's talking about making football decisions, correct decisions at the right time. That's a no-brainer. Him getting in there with the experience he's got, what he's done at Aberdeen, what he's done at Kilmarnock, all these places. He is a strong football person who's got his own identity, will know what that squad would need to move forward. And then you use the supercomputer to help you out, and then you use your eyes as well, and you pick players from that. But he's a proper football manager who would get the best out of that team, I'm sure.
And he's a strong character. We all know Derek very well. He's a strong character. What we would say is the clubs he's been involved in, mostly, you'd imagine he had full control over transfers and who's coming and who's going. Maybe this would have to be a different way for him to work. But I'm sure we also know Derek, he's open-minded. I'm sure he'd be willing, if he would want to go to Hearts, to work in that kind of system. But there's a lot to be done. Yes, go on. Last one briefly, Michael. Yeah.
On that front, because I do think there's a narrative built up about Derek as if he's some sort of, autocrat that, it's my way or the highway. As we've just been talking about, it would be utter madness for any individual, be it any of us here or people actually involved in football clubs, to turn a blind eye to technology. Derek's not stupid. He's not stupid.
No, listen, spot on. That's exactly what I meant. Spot on. Exactly. If there's something good to be used, Derek's the kind of guy we know well.
Yeah, you use everything.
He would be well up for trying to utilising it in the right way.
And the thing is as well here, when you've got a situation where your neck is on the line as a manager, ultimately, what do we constantly hear from head coaches who are involved in these scenarios? Yeah, I've got the final say. Well, if you've got the final say, then you need to be able to put your foot down and say, no, I'm not signing that player, or yes, that's a good, this is where it's layers and layers of middle management, which are actually destructive and not helping football.
But Neil Critchley did make the point to us on this show. I think it was the first time he had actually said it in public that yes, he got the final say in those players, but he didn't get the say on the shortlist that came to him. So somebody might have to adapt and work in that way. Got to move on because we're talking obviously Derek McInnes. So let's talk Kilmarnock. Crucial win at the weekend for St Johnstone. It's another hammer blow, Alan.
Yeah, back-to-back wins for Kelly, 2-0, 2-0, and they're picking up at the right time. And you've got to, St Johnstone, I thought they'd be down for a long period of time now, and I obviously can't see them getting out of it. But again, like, they play decent football and they do create opportunities, but they can't score. I mean, ultimately, that's their kind of Achilles heel, and they make silly mistakes at times defensively. But I thought Kilmarnock looked good, well set up. When they get the opportunities, Watson there with a lovely goal, and they end up getting the penalty as well that Armstrong puts away that we'll see in a minute. But look, big saves, big moments. Look, that's what I'm saying. St Johnstone, they can create, but when it's just in front of goal, they're just lacking a little bit. And for me, I just feel that it's just going to be a real struggle from now to the end of the season. They've got a big game coming up next against Ross County. I mean, if they can get something there, possibly, but I still think it's a step too far. Yeah. And Kilmarnock, they're just hitting the level at the right time, going into the kind of back end of the season. Well, they hadn't been great
on the road. And obviously getting 3 points was crucial. But you're right on St Johnstone, Alex. It's Ross County or bust. And they have no choice. They're going to win that game next week.
Both teams struggle for goals. I don't know if it'll be a good game to watch or not, to be quite honest with you. But there's so much on the line.
Yeah. It'll be tense.
There's so much on it. And of course it will be, because everybody wants to see their team stay up and do well and everything. But, I mean, it's going to be a nervy 90 minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah. And Bobby Wales, by the way, off to Swansea, we mentioned him a few times, off to Swansea, £300,000. So Kelly getting some money in. I don't know what you'll make of that championship move. Maybe we'll come back to that in another week. We've got to push on because there's a controversial moment in this one. Motherwell defeating Dundee.
Can't wait to see what Michael says.
Well, I'm with you, by the way. But, Dundee were looking good in the first half in this game. Probably should have been 2-0 ahead. Tony Docherty, I know at the end of the game, is comments about the disallowed goal. But it's a really significant result because it leaves Dundee right in a troubling position, Michael.
Absolutely. I mean, I take it back to the Dundee derby because, obviously we did that on Premier and they were outstanding and it felt like they were going to kick on. They played Rangers. They were very good, but they lost the game. And then,
what a goal.
I know, it's incredible. And then they come back with another victory. Then it's another, they're win, lose. And to this one here, if they were able to back it up and get 2 wins on the spin, you'd start to think to yourself, all right, okay, they're clear, they're fine. And this goal here, if they go 2-0 up at half-time, then they're fine. They're not losing that game. They're not losing the game. Credit to Motherwell. They were outstanding in the second half.
Especially with 10 men, by the way.
Yeah,
they were better.
For a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
But Dundee they weren't great. They were not good enough in that second half. I mean, look, we can talk about all this game, and it is a red card, no question about it. But the incident that we just saw, the second goal from Portales that's disallowed, that's it. That's the game in a nutshell there. And I just find it absolutely incredible that any football person, and by the way, I've seen plenty of them online, trying to say, yeah, that's the right decision. I fail to believe that if that happened to their club, they'd be like, oh, well, yeah, that was the right decision. Because it's not a black and white. It is a subjective interpretation of the law. To say that Clark Robertson is challenging for the ball comes down to how do you define challenging? Because if he's standing 3 yards further away from the ball and he does the same motion, are you claiming that he's challenging for the ball there?
It's only if he interferes with play, Michael, and it didn't look like it, did it?
But that's my point.
It didn't. It definitely didn't.
The point is, it comes down to how close do you have to get to then be interfering with it? And what happened in that instance, I think anybody with a vague understanding of football looks at that and says he has not interfered with Thompson at all. He didn't touch him
at all.
You don't need to get me started. You don't need to get me started with the rest.
Yeah, let's get you started.
Let's get you started. See if there wasn't 3 minutes to go in the show, Al, I would get started on it. Especially when it goals like that. Significant points in the season. Here's Stephen Adamson in with a comment as well. Go on, Michael.
The thing that's absolutely outrageous about it is that it would be bad enough if the referee chalked it off and VAR didn't get involved. Yeah. But the goal was given and VAR goes in and finds that.
I know. And on Stephen's point there, the reason he didn't go over to the monitor, I believe, because it's judged to be a factual decision because it's an offside, so the referee's told it can't stand. But
it's a terrible decision.
But the shocking thing is, it's not a factual decision because VAR has basically made the decision that it
I agree,
was
but I've just explained to Stephen why the ref wouldn't have gone to the monitor.
Yes, yeah. But the ref should have gone over because, as we've just explained, it is a subjective interpretation.
And so he could have looked at that again and went, no, actually, I don't believe that he is interfering. Or,
exactly, Al. The ref should get a say. I couldn't agree more. The ref should get a say if there's an element of subjective nature about this. Anyway, look, just on Dundee, Alan, briefly, because they were in a good position in the game. And goal or not, you saw the winning goal for Motherwell. Maswinese, a great leap. Didn't look great defensively. You've got to look after your own business. And then a few of their top players didn't step up the second half when they were playing against 10 men.
Yeah, well, you look at that second goal, Robertson at the back post, you can't get out jumped by Maswinese. I'm sorry, you can't. You have to go and be aggressive and win it. But let's not kid ourselves. Dundee, they score goals. We've always known that. The problem is how much they concede. They give away, Tony Docherty will tell you that himself, the amount of silly goals that they give away, defensive lapse in concentration, things like that we've just seen there on the highlights. Needs to be better. It's like 73 goals they've conceded.
I know.
But that's the problem. I'm sure it's only Rangers, Celtic and maybe Hibs that scored more than them. And look at the position they're in. And it's quite easy just to look at the next column and see 73 goals scored against. That's the problem. That's what needs to be fixed.
But they do have St Johnstone, Ross County, Kilmarnock still to come their last 3 games. They'll hope that's enough. Motherwell, we should say, well done. It was never really in doubt. They're safe. And Lennon Miller, Young Player of the Year, which I think you'd probably all agree with as well. And just before we go, well done to Falkirk. They got over the line. Michael promoted John McGlynn, PFA Manager of the Year. Well deserved. Is he in the frame for the Hearts job then with all that in mind, Michael?
Well, considering
you've got 30 seconds.
Considering I thought you just said John McGlynn. Well, he's definitely going to be in my shout then.
Listen, John, if you give him that continental feel, Michael, anything can happen the way he's done the last couple of years. That's obviously not a point for now then. We'll come back to that another week. But anyway, well done to Falkirk. And time will tell who the other championship club are in that playoff final, and indeed will 2 championship clubs be coming up this season. Michael's seen a lot of the championship. Maybe he can get a view on that next week. We're almost at the hour mark though, so we better go. Michael, Alan, thank you very much. We're back next Monday on the Social Club. We'll see you then. Bye for now.
The Scottish Football Social Club is brought to you by McBookie.com. Take a lookie at McBookie today.